So you click this video for one reason, and that reason is because you don't know how to make your music sound good. Now, 6 years ago, I was in your exact position, and I remember how it feels to be where you're at. You click YouTube video after YouTube video. They're trying to sell you vocal presets. They're trying to tell you all this boring shit that it just goes in one ear and out the other, and it's so fucking boring to watch. All of these different plugins, and what is a fucking compressor? What is an equalizer? What is this shit, and why do I have to learn it? Why can't I just make my music sound good? Don't worry, I'm gonna save years of your time with this video. Watch this video, and I promise you, the things that I tell you in this video, they will click and make sense to you, and you will understand how mixing works. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. If you think this video is helpful, you can follow my Instagram so I can get more baddies right there on screen. Helps me get bitches if I have a higher follower count. But with that being said, let's get into it. This video is not to retain your attention. I'm going to give you pure value with this. So click full screen and watch the entire video, and I promise you this will save you years of your life. Let's get into it. So if you're complete and utter fucking noob and you've never made any music whatsoever, the first thing you need is a digital workstation, or a DAW. Now, the DAW that I recommend you use, and this is personal preference, you can literally do, all DAWs work the same essentially, but I recommend FL Studio. It's what I've always used for the past 6 years, and I've never had a problem. You can make good music with it. Plenty of people do. So I would just recommend you go look up DAWs and pick the one you think looks cool, but I recommend FL Studio, and watch some tutorials on it because I'm not going to cover it in this video because of how basic it is. Now from this point, we need to record some vocals. So what we need to do is we need to drag a beat into the playlist. This thing right here is how your song is just laid out, and we need to put some vocals on the beat. So I have my beat here, and what we're going to do is we're going to come click this button right here. This opens the channel rack, and I'll explain what all of this is in a little bit, but all we have to do is click an insert. It doesn't matter what insert, but we just click one and we click in one, or in one, in two. Just listen to them both, and one of them is going to pop up with your microphone. You're going to be able to hear yourself. So what you can do to not hear yourself is click this green button right here. As you can see, I kind of stutter when I do it because I can hear myself. You click that, and now you can't hear yourself. Now click this button right here. This initializes this insert and tells it to record your mic. Now we click this button right here, and it's going to say, it's gonna bring up these options. Just click audio into the playlist as an audio clip. It's gonna click, and it's gonna start recording. Now click spacebar if you want to stop recording, and now it has some vocals recorded out. So click this button and you can go listen to them. If I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess. You've now recorded a vocal over a beat, but we know from listening to it that it sounds like shit. So now we have to move on to the confusing stuff, and that is mixing. This is where a lot of people get tripped up because you can fuck up your vocals if you don't do this correctly, but this is also how you make a shitty vocal sound good. So what is mixing? Well, mixing is just a process of putting effects on your vocals to make them sound better over the beat. Now I'm gonna go through all of the different effects, and I'm gonna make sure that you understand them. I'm not gonna let you leave this video without understanding what these fucking effects do, because I know how confusing they look, but I promise you they are not that confusing. But before we get into all of the effects and I show you what they all do and how you use them, you need to get plugins. But you only need to get one plugin. But what is a plugin? A plugin is just essentially an external file that you put into FL Studio that is an effect. Okay, so how do I explain this? We all know what Autotune is, right? Autotune is, it makes your vocals match the key of the beat, if you didn't know. But the Autotune that FL Studio gives you by default is really bad. It's called Pitcher, and it fucking sounds like ass. So we need something called a plugin. Now I'm not gonna send you on your way with like a list of 1,000 different plugins. There are a lot of different plugins you can add. You can experiment around. There's a lot of different plugins, but the only plugin you need for now, like the most foundational, fundamental plugin that you need, is Autotune from Antrez. It looks like this. You can look up Antrez Autotune, or I've left a link in the description that you can just go click the link and you can go check it out. This is the Autotune that literally everyone uses. Like pretty much all popular artists use this just because of how flexible it is and how good you can make it sound if you configure it. I would say you can get away with this and you can just use Pitcher, but I genuinely don't think you really can. But thankfully, this is the only plugin you need to worry about getting. Now I'm not going to go into how to install it because it quite literally is pretty simple. Like they show you how to, like, it pretty much does it for you, to be honest. It's really easy, and if you don't understand once you've downloaded Autotune and like installed it, if it doesn't show up in FL Studio, you can just go watch a video on it. It's really simple, it's really easy, but this is something you will need because this does not come with FL Studio, and it will make you it'll make your life a hell of a lot easier. In order to start applying effects to our vocals and start to mix and make them sound better, we actually need to do some steps. So I'm going to show you what to do, and then I'm going to explain what I've done, because otherwise it's just going to get too confused. So just follow along with what I do. So as you can see here, we have the beat on the top and we have our vocal right here. So if we double click our vocal, it'll pop up with this right here. And as you can see, there's this track right here, and we can scroll up on this and it'll put it to a number. This number is essentially just linking it to this channel rack. So we have a bunch of different inserts, and as you can see on our insert 1, we have where we are recording. This is where our mic is going through. So we don't want to touch this one. So whether you put your mic to insert 1 or insert 10, it doesn't matter. We just don't want to touch that one because that's where our mic is routed to, and that's where we're recording. But what we want to do is we want to take this vocal that we have recorded out and we want to link it to a different insert, because what we're going to do is we're going to add effects through this channel rack. So as you can see here, I've just added it to a random number. So I put it on insert 4. You can see that there's these slots over here on the right. Now what these are they're slots to put effects. If we just click this really quick, I can show you. You're not going to understand what I'm doing, but just bear with me. I'm going to add something called an equalizer on here, and I'm going to show you what we can do with effects. So if we play it, now that it's routed to this insert 4, anything we put on these slots right here is going to apply it to this vocal. All of my vocal is going to show up in this equalizer here. If I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess. Now if we want to like equalize our vocal, which I'm going to explain what equalizing is and how you do it properly, but if we just turn up this bass right here, the lower end on the left is the bass. If we turn that up, it's going to get really bassy. So let's, if I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess. Versus if I had one wish, it would be to be the god. As you can see, it's applying this bass because that's what an equalizer does, is it changes the frequencies in the vocal. But that's what this is. So that's how we apply effects. So I'm gonna go through all of the effects now so that you can start to apply them to your vocal and you understand what ones do what and how to use them to make your vocal sound good. Now the way that I'm gonna do this is I'm going to quite literally break down one of the mixes that I've used for a song that I've made in the past, and I think the mix for this song was very clean. So this is what the mix looked like, and I'm going to go through all of these effects and I'm going to show you what they are, what they do, and how they work. But this is an example of the exact song that this mix, like this is the mix that you're looking at.
You know I love you, baby. Take your shirt off, your thong off, and just fuck me, baby. Let's go spin racks on you, baby. You are all I want, baby. Take your shirt off, your thong off, and just fuck me, baby. Miss your body, baby.
So first on the list is obviously, as you can see, Autotune Artist. So I'm using, like I said earlier, Antares Autotune. I'm using Autotune Artist. But now when you put this on your vocal, you have to configure. You have to do some sort of settings in here to make the Autotune actually go to the right key. Because the way that music works is we have keys and scales, and I don't want to like confuse you with music theory, but all beats that you're going to use fit under some sort of key and scale. And what that is as you can see here, like all these piano notes, or some beats might use specific keys in like combination with each other, and if you use one, if like you sing a key that's not matching what the key and the scale of the beat is, it will just sound terrible. It will sound completely off key and you won't sound good. So what you need to do is you need to find the key and the scale of your beat. Now there are plenty of ways to do this. Antares actually comes with an auto key plugin. I'm not going to show you how to do it in this video because it's kind of just, it's going to consume too much time, but you can just go look up how to find the key to a beat and make sure you set it up here to the key and the scale. Now these other knobs here, I've just laid out some easy settings for you to copy. I'm not going to go too deep into what these knobs actually do, but just as like a quick explanation, this is how fast the speed of the Autotune goes. So if this is at 0, you're always going to be on tune, but you're going to sound very robotic. Flex tune is how much it's actually going to allow you to be off key in sense. I don't want to confuse you, so I'm not even going to continue going on about that. But these knobs, you can just Google them separately. I have videos on Autotune that explain this more in detail, but these are some good settings just by default that you can copy, and you should sound good unless you are brain dead. Now as you can see, the second effect that we are using is the fruity limiter. Now I'm not actually using this for limiting, I'm using this for something called a noise gate. What a noise gate is it's essentially turning off your mic signal when you're not talking so that it removes the extra static in your microphone. So I'm actually going to go in and show you how to configure this, but what I want you to do is copy these settings right here and then tweak it how I'm going to show you. So if we come in here, we click the fruity limiter, you can see we have this gain all the way down, we have this release around here, and then we have this threshold. Now when I turn the threshold up, this yellow bar goes up. So what is this yellow bar? Well, anytime our mic volume goes above this yellow bar, it's going to turn the signal on. Now if it is down here, it's always going to have it on. But what we want to do is we want to actually make it so that this yellow bar is right above our static when we're not talking, but we want to make sure that it's not just cutting off our vocals when we aren't talking loud enough. We're going to tweak this together, and I'm going to show you how to do it for yourself. So as you can see, when I talk above this is kind of going to suck because you're not going to hear me when I turn this up, but there's no static when I don't talk. And that's because the static is right under that yellow bar. But if I turn this up too high, you're now not really going to be able to hear me because it's cutting me out. But if it's all the way down, then you just can hear all the static. But your goal should be to just put this right above the static, just like this. As you can see, it cleans up the vocal, and that's the whole point of a noise gate. Now, as you can see, next on the list, we have something that says R compressor stereo. And what all this is just a compressor. So compressing is actually going to get a little confusing. So what I felt I should do is whip out the whiteboard. So what in goddamn tarnation is fucking compression? It seems confusing, and that's because it fucking is. But don't worry, I'm gonna help you. So when we record a vocal out, here's what a vocal tends to look like. So you have these like little quieter parts. So this is an audio wave, and then you get a little bit louder, and then like, what the fuck is this? Okay, bro. So you are a little quieter, and now you get a little louder, but then you go quieter again, and then maybe you get really loud, and then you just go quieter again, and then a little bit, and then it dips a little bit. You get the idea. So this is what an audio wave looks like, and if we come into FL Studio, you can actually see this if we zoom in. So there's these quieter parts right here, quieter or louder parts right here, and it kind of is a little uneven. Now this is like super simple vocal, so it's not that bad, but when you get into like making more intense music, it can start to really differ in volume. And if we think about it, there's kind of a problem with that, because what happens if you are whispering at one point of the vocal, but then you start fucking screaming at one point of the vocal, and then you go back to whispering? Well, now your goddamn listener has to hear you fucking screaming your lungs out, but the volume hasn't changed. And we don't want to like manually go in and just fucking decrease the volume, right? Like that's kind of stupid. So the way that we combat this is with compression. Now what compression actually does in a technical sense is it takes these louder parts of the vocal like this, and it kind of just crunches them down so that they can meet with these lower parts of the vocal, and it all evens out and it's more flat. Now if you take a quick gander at compression, it's really confusing when you look at it because there's all these different names and knobs and different shit. And if you want to go more in detail with this and how you can actually fit this better to your vocals and not just copy my settings, and you want more direct implementation and you want to actually know how you can fit this to your vocals in specific, I highly recommend you go first link in the description and you check out my school community. Inside of here, I give you cheat sheets for compression, and I go into it in more detail, in way more detail that I can't actually go into in as deep in this video. But if you're interested in that and everything else that you will get if you join my school community, you can click the first link in the description, and there's a video on that page that you can watch to see what you would all get. But here's an example of all the shit that you get. But with that being said, I'm going to try and explain it to you so that you understand what some of these knobs do. So if you take a look, threshold is when the compressor kicks on. So if you are singing right here and then it goes louder and then it goes deeper, not deeper, that's what your mom likes, but let's say this is at negative 20 dB. So that's volume points is dB. And then this big one right here is like negative 5 dB. So these are volume points. If your threshold is at, let's say, negative 10 dB, this is when the compressor will kick on. So anytime you are above this is when the compressor kicks on. So for this right here, and the way that we tell it how much to compress is through the ratio knob. So the ratio knob is how much we want it to crunch down. So the higher the ratio, the more compression you're going to get. I'm not going to explain the math. I go into the math in my school community if you are interested in it, not in a boring way, but like so you actually understand how compression is compressing. But essentially, the higher the number that your ratio is, the more that it's actually going to crunch it down, and the more compression you'll be able to hear, and the more compression you will have applied to your vocal. Just as a reference point, you can go anywhere from like 5 to negative 10 dB and you'll be good. I just play around with it, and the main knob that you want to play around with is mainly the threshold. The lower your threshold right here, the more compressing you are going to get overall, because it's going to catch more of the vocal in the compression. But yeah, this has probably confused you now, so I'm sorry if it did. Compressing is kind of an advanced thing. It's not advanced, but it's like something that is kind of hard to grasp. But the gain knob is really simple. This is just a volume knob. It turns up the volume because when you compress, naturally you're going to lose some volume to the vocal just because you're literally crunching down the volume of the vocal. This is how you make sure a vocal stays consistent in volume so that it's not just getting loud randomly and then getting quiet and then getting loud and then getting quiet. Now next on the list, as you can see under the R compressor, we have two Fruity Parametric EQ2s. Now an EQ is short for equalizer. So what an equalizer is it is essentially the way that we can morph the sound of our vocals at a frequency level. Now I know that sounds confusing, and it's because it is, and I just don't know how to explain it with my fucking words. But as you can see here, this is a screenshot of an EQ while my vocals are playing. So these pink things right here, and I'm gonna show you what these numbers are in a second, but these pink things right here are just parts of my vocal. So all of our vocals are made up of thousands of different things called frequencies, and it's just like a noise. Like if you ever hear a ringing in your ear, that's like a fucking frequency. If you hear like bass in a car, that's a frequency. Just any sort of sound vibrating is a frequency, and our vocals are made up of thousands of different frequencies. Now the problem is that some of these frequencies don't sound good, and there's multiple reasons for that. For example, a very common EQ that you will see of removing frequencies from a vocal is removing things under the 100 hertz area. So anything on this side right here, as you can see, I've taken this first band and I've cut it out, so anything over here you won't be able to hear. And the reason for that is because most of the time the beats that you use take up most of the space with the 808s or the bass in the beat. So what we do, so that they don't clash with each other, where our vocal is trying to like take up the same space as the 808s in the beat, we just cut it out. So that's an example of clearing out some of the frequencies in our vocals. Or another example is right here. This third band right here does a very dramatic dip, and that is because this frequency right here, there is none right here, but I can show you what this frequency sounds like and why I cut it out. So if I drag this up, it'll actually boost the frequency now, and I can show you what frequency I am cutting out. And the reason you cut it out is because you just don't like the sound of it. So this is called subtractive EQ, but this is what it sounds like.
If I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess.
So as you can hear, that frequency right here, it's kind of blocky and bricky and whatever. So I just turn it down and it sounds like this.
If I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess.
So you can kind of hear the difference there. And I do that with all of these other bands right here. So if I listen to this one, you can see what this one sounds like.
If I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess.
Pretty harsh, so I turn it down. And also with this,
If I had one wish,
it's very harsh, so I turn that down, and same with this one. Now this one right here, I boost it up because things up in this area tend to sound better and make your vocals sound clearer if they're turned up. But a lot of this is stuff that you'll just have to play around with and figure out what works for you. Now there are actually cheat sheets you can find online that show you all of the different things. If I come into my music creation course, I'll actually just show you the EQ cheat sheet that I give my students. As you can see right here, this cheat sheet shows you all of the different zones in your vocal and what they actually tend to sound like. And you can also just look up vocal EQ cheat sheet and find other ones. But so there's different parts of your vocal that just sound different, and you can either choose to increase them or decrease them, or just do whatever to them just to play around with the vocal to see what kind of sound you want. But this is how you change the actual sound of the frequencies in your vocal. So what you can do is you can just copy this one right here, and you can also copy this one right here. I have two of them. This one is more just a smooth out, it kind of shapes the vocal a little bit more, but I'll actually show you what the vocal sounds like without, and then I'll show you what it sounds like with it.
If I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess.
So that's without any EQ, and this is with both of those EQs.
If I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess.
And now if your ears aren't trained enough, you probably won't even be able to hear a difference, but it's essentially just cleaning up the vocal and making it sound better so that it can fit over the beat better and it won't clash with the beat as much.
If I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess.
Now as you can see on the very bottom of the list, I'm going to cover Fruity Reverb and Fruity Delay in a second because they're really easy to understand, but we have a DSER on the very bottom. So this is what a DSER looks like. So what is a DSER? A DSER is essentially something that was made because the frequency that our S's in our vocals make is typically very harsh. If I do it just real quick, just to like kind of brace yourself, but like it really hurts your ears. And the reason that they made a DSER is so that we can turn that down, because theoretically speaking, we could come into FL Studio, we could find where our S's are by using this method right here, by dragging up, finding where the S's are, and then turning them down. Problem with that is we're not always making an S noise, and if we just did this method right here, it would just always constantly turn this band down, and it would kind of mess up the sound of our vocal. Like, it would always have this dip right here, which isn't what we necessarily want. So the reason they made a DSER is so that that whole type of EQ I just showed you can essentially just be tweaked to only turn on at a certain time, or when we go above this threshold. So right here, this is the Waves DSER. FL Studio has a DSER, it's called Maximus, but you have to configure it in some weird way. So I'm just using the Waves DSER, but you can go figure out how to use it through Maximus. What do these knobs do? There's only two knobs you really have to pay attention to. It's the threshold and the frequency. The frequency is where your S's are, because not every person has the same S frequency in their vocals. Some might be 5500, some might be 7000. You have to go listen with an EQ, turn it up, and then go find where yours are, and then pick that frequency out, and then you need to tweak the threshold down until it's removing the S's just enough to warm your vocal up and make it so they're not so fucking harsh. So if I go in here and I go test it, so now you can hear me. So let's do still pretty harsh. So we're gonna turn down, well, first we're gonna go find what frequency we're supposed to be guessing. So we add an EQ. So it seems like around 6900, around there. So we're going to add that. Yep, it's already there. So now we're just going to watch this and put it right below where our S's are. So that sounds good. Now the last two effects that I haven't showed you yet are the Fruity Reverb 2 and the Fruity Delay 3, and I can't really use these to explain with my voice, but I can just show you. So Reverb essentially just makes your voice sound like it's in a cave, and it widens the vocal. So if I turn on the EQ and I'll let you hear it, you can,
If I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess.
you can hear it at the end, and then also.
If I had one wish, it would be to be the goddess.
So you can actually turn down the effect volume just by going like this, and now the reverb will be way less. So make sure you do that with reverb and the delay. Now delay is essentially just going to repeat your vocal, and it's going to delay it. You'll see what I mean. You'll see what I mean.
To be the goddess. To be the goddess. To be the goddess. To be the goddess.
So obviously it's pretty chaotic, so we're just going to turn that way down so it doesn't like mess up anything. And now we have a full vocal chain. I'm going to leave this vocal chain in the description. Normally this is for my school members only, but I'm just going to give it to you for free because I want to help you out. So you can go download this and you can go tweak it for your own vocals, and yeah, go have fun. If you are interested in getting extra help, I've given you a lot of value, so God forgive me for my sins, but if you want to join the school community, it'll be the first link in the description. You can go check that out and see what you all get just by watching the video on that page. But with that being said, I hope this video helps you. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.